This is the next witness is minor one, and this is the one that when you sketch, if you sketch, do not sketch the face you features. Okay, thank you. And there are two. Are there two? Somebody told me there are two. You agreed to not do that. Is that correct, sir? Sketch artist nodded. The court, thank you. Please be seated. Your Honor, briefly, we called the next witness. We wanted to read some stipulations into the record. All right. Thank you. It is hereby stipulated to and agreed by and between the United States of America by and through its attorneys, John Loggs Jr., United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, and defendants Robert Sylvester Kelly, Daryl McDavid, and Milton Brown, that the following facts are and should be considered to be true and accurate. Stipulations, government's exhibits 301 to 303 and 304 are true and accurate copies and transcripts of proceedings before a special grand jury of the Circuit Court of Cook County that occurred on the dates reflected on the transcripts. Stipulation on or about June 5th, 2002, a grand jury of the Circuit Court of Cook County, Illinois, returned an indictment charging defendant Robert Kelly in the case of People versus of the State of Illinois versus Robert Kelly, 02C, whatever, with 21 counts of 21 counts of child pornography relating to Video 1 and Jane. The case was tried to a jury beginning on May 20, 2008 and ended June 13, 2008. Robert Kelly was acquitted of the charges. And y'all charging him with the same shit all over again. From approximately June 5th, 2002 through June 13th, 2008, Robert Kelly was released on bond and was not in custody while the Cook County case was pending. Stipulation, Government Exhibit 305 is a true and accurate copy of the June 2002 indictment in the case of People versus R. Kelly. Stipulation, Government is a true case. Same shit. Okay. Miss, would you please take your right plate? Miss, would you please stand and raise your right hand? And when you testify, you may remove your mask. Thank you. Miss Appertine, you can question the witness. Thank you, Your Honor. So it is the prosecution, y'all. About to cross-examine or direct examination of the girl that allegedly got peed on in the video. She is finally speaking. So if y'all been waiting to hear from this girl, Sparkle's niece, her name is in the chat. I see it over there. Y'all got her name in the chat. I'm not gonna say it because they are trying to protect her. Here we go, y'all. This is the one y'all been waiting for. I gotta fix me a drink. Good morning. Good morning. Now, normally I would ask that you state and spell your name, your first and last name, but we're not going to do that today because you are testifying under a pseudonym. Is that correct? Correct. And what's that pseudonym? Jane. Jane, can you please tell us the month and the year in which you were born? September 1984. And you may need to move just a little bit closer to the microphone. And again, can you tell the month and year you were born? September 1984. And how old are you now? 37. Please tell the jurors where you were raised. In Oak Park, Illinois. And can you please tell the jurors a little bit about your educational background? I went to junior high at Emerson. I did homeschool and I did high school at OPRF. Shout out to everybody in Chicago. What are some of the activities that you participated in while in high school? Basketball. When did you start playing basketball? I started playing basketball in about 6th grade. And then did you continue on through junior high and in high school? Yes. Did you take team photos with your teams over the various years where you guys were wearing uniforms? Yes. I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Government Exhibit 116. And you should see that on the screen up in front of you. Do you see that there? Yes. And what is that? That's my high school photo when I was a sophomore, I believe. And yeah, that was me a part of the basketball team. And you said you were a sophomore? So that's about 10th grade, right? Yes. And you were approximately what, 15 or 16 years old in that photo? Correct. Your Honor, the government will move to admit Government Exhibit 116 and publish it to the jury. Any objections? No objections. It's admitted. You may publish it. And again, this is your basketball photo. Correct. And although it is whited out right there, your number. Christopher, good looking. Appreciate it. Thanks for the cash app. That's Christopher Dub. You know who it is. And again, this is your basketball photo, correct? Yes. And all those whited out there, your number and teams like name is on that shirt. Is that right? Yes. And when you did stop playing, and when did you stop playing basketball? My junior year in high school. Now, you mentioned that you were homeschooled at some point during your educational career. Is that correct? Yes. And why were you homeschooled? Because I was in a music group. So we are not going to mention the actual name of the music group during your testimony, but we are, well, just refer to it as a musical group. Is that okay with you? That's fine. How many members were in this group? It was a total of 4. And who were they? Without naming their names, but just generally, who were they? My cousins. And whose side of the family? Technically, both sides of the family. So on both your mom and your dad's side, yeah. Uh-huh. Was your family musically inclined? Yes. Including your parents? Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about what they did in terms of music? Well, my mom used to sing in a music group when she was younger, and my dad was a musician. And when you say a musician, did your father pass away? Oh, when you say was a musician, did your father pass away? Yes. And when was that? About a year ago. Jane, can you tell us how the group came together? Yes. So it was a group of cousins. My uncle actually started the group. He saw potential in us. We were the writers. My cousins were the musicians and the rappers. How old were you when the group came together? I was about 12. What type of music was the group creating? It was like positive hip hop music, like Christian hip hop. And what was your role in the group? I was like the lead rapper. Did you also do some singing as well? Yes. Did the group have a CD? We did. How well did the CD do? Did the public, well, how well did the public react to the CD? It was very successful overseas. So we were really popular and we went like platinum and gold in like Germany and Europe. And what was that overseas? And that was overseas, right? Yes, correct. And in the United States, how was it? Same or a little bit less? A little bit less. We were popular like locally, but not as much as we were out of the country. And where did this group perform here locally? Here, meaning in the United States. It would just be like local churches or festivals. I'm showing you've been previously marked what has been marked as Exhibit 118. Do you see that on the screen there in front of you? Yes. And what is that? That's a photo of me during the group. I'm pretty sure we took that for like a magazine or something out of the country. Yeah. Did the group from time to time take professional photos to be used for promotion and CDs and things like that? Yes. And is this one of the photos? It is. And how old were you in that photo? I was 13. Your Honor, the government moves to admit government's Exhibit 118 to publish to the jury. Is there any objections? Hearing none is submitted. You may publish. So again, this was one of the photos that you took as part of the music group. Is that correct? Yes. And did you use this in promotional activities? Is that what is it for? Correct. What was the time for you when you were touring with your musical group and playing with your cousins? No, how was the time for you when you were touring with the music group and playing with your cousins? It was an amazing time. We were very successful. We got to travel and do a lot of different countries, and I was living my dream, so I was very happy. And who did you travel with when you all went overseas? My uncle. So you had adult chaperones that were with you and your cousins. Yes. I didn't ask this before. How old were your cousins in relation to you? They were a couple of years older than me. So if I was over 13, between like 15 to 17, and during the tours, that's how it started, this, right? Is that when you, what? And during the tours, that's how it started, this. Is that's when you were doing homeschooling? Is that correct? Yes. Did you also do some homeschooling when you were not on tour, when you were back in the States? Yes. And why was that? Because we were still traveling. So even though we might not have been like on tour, we were still, we could, we were, we could go over to work on a CD or be called for a show. So I didn't enroll back into school. Okay. At the group's peak, did the group sign like a record deal or recording arrangement? Yes. And how did that make you feel when that happened? It made me feel accomplished. It made me feel happy. How did you see music? No, and how do you see music? I was very inspired by music. Again, my family was very musically inclined, and it was very therapeutic for me. So that was my perception of music. Did you see it as a career, as something you could do for the rest of your life, even for money? Yes, that was my goal. Are you familiar with a person named Robert Kelly? Yes. And how did you first come to know of Mr. Kelly? Through my aunt Stephanie. Did you know who he was before you personally met him? Yes. And how did you know who he was? As an artist through his music and his success. What kind of music was he creating? These some stupid ass questions. R&B music. And how was it that you heard the music or saw it? Through television, radio, the music, his music would be his music will routinely play on the radio. Correct. And what about TV? Like, where would you see him on TV? Well, and like award shows or just different video channels. What about, did you see like recordings from live concerts and such on TV? Yes. And you had mentioned that you had occasion, wait, and you mentioned that you had occasion to personally meet Mr. Kelly. Is that right? Yes. Can you move a little bit closer to the mic? Sure. I think you can actually move it towards you too, the actual mic. There you go. Did a member of your family have a closer connection to Mr. Kelly? Yes. And who was that family member? Stephanie. Stephanie Sparkle, for those who don't know. And what side of how was Stephanie related to you? She was related to my mom. So she's your mom's sister. Sister? Oh, okay. Uh-huh. And we'll talk a little more about Stephanie in a moment. But when you were talking about how you knew of Mr. Kelly, did you know him to have a stage name? Yes. Before you met him? And what was that? R. Kelly. And was he referred to as R. Kelly when you first met him? Yes. I like to direct your attention to the first time you met Robert Kelly. So I'm directing your attention to 1996 and 97. How old were you during those years? She should have asked her what year you met him. You telling her what year he met him. I was about 12 or 13. And can you please explain the circumstances around that first meeting? He came to a gospel concert at my church. You said it was a gospel concert? Was he performing there? No, he was just coming as a guest. And at the time, did you know that he was going to be there at the event? No. So was your music group performing at the event? No. What were the people's reaction when he showed up? They were very excited. How so? Can you describe like the energy in the room? Like what happened when he walked in? It was just like a lot of wows. It was a lot of whispers. It was just like different energy. There was attention drawn to his presence. And again, he was there to perform. And again, he wasn't there to perform or anything. Was he? No. Why were people having those? Why were people having those? Did you have that reaction when he walked in? Carmen Rowe. Thank you, Carmen. I appreciate you. Um, did you have that reaction when he walked in? I did. Why? I was excited. I knew who he was as an artist. I knew his level of success. So I was, as a performer, as a person who was inspired to be in the music industry, I was just excited, like every other fan in the room. You said his level of success, and you say you were a fan. Like, are you talking about like superstar level? Yes. What about him then made him seem like a superstar? His music, just his he was famous, seeing him on TV, hearing him on the radio, his level of success at the time. And so at this church concert, did you get to personally meet him? Yes. And how did that happen? It was like backstage or when the concert was over, my aunt took me over to where he was and she introduced us. Oh, don't this sound familiar? Did you get a chance to have a conversation with him? Yes. I was just explaining, how excited I was that he was there. It was pretty general like that. So then, when was the next time you met Mr. Kelly in person? Um, the next time I remember meeting him in person was when my group was performing, and he came to our show that we were having in Chicago. And about how much time had passed between that first meeting and the second one? I can't remember exactly, but it probably was like a few months, weeks to a month. Okay, not years. No, weeks or months. Uh-huh. Did you know that he would be there this time at your performance? Did you know that in advance? Yes. And how did you know that? Through my aunt Stephanie. And so when he showed up this time, what were people reactions when he came into that concert? It was the same as before. The crowd was a little bit more youthful. So there was a lot more morale or excitement and attention drawn to him. And again, so at this time, were you aspiring to be a musician yourself? Yo, these some stupid ass questions, dude. Like, you asked her this already. She told you 100 times. Like, she done been to Japan and Germany already. Like, what the fuck? Like, there's some stupid ass questions. And again, so this time you were aspiring to be a musician yourself. Yes. And how did you feel about Mr. Kelly being able to observe you perform as an artist? I was very excited. And how did the performance go? It went very well. Everything was as expected as to be. So then after the performance, did you get to meet Mr. Kelly face to face? Yes. Can you explain that? How was that interaction? How that interaction went? Um, when we got done, I went to the vehicle with my aunt and we were discussing the show. He was telling me how great of a job I did, how the concert went well, and just giving me like pointers on how to handle the stage. And that was pretty much it. What did it mean to you to have the opportunity to meet such a superstar at this point in your own music career? She met him already. I felt successful. I felt happy. Did you receive any feedback from Mr. Kelly about how to perform? Yo, is this fucking person paying attention? Like, is this person really paying attention? Did you receive any feedback from Mr. Kelly about how the performance was? She just told you. He just gave us some pointers and shit. Oh my God, yo. What did it mean to you to have the opportunity to meet such a superstar at this point in your own music career? I felt successful. I felt happy. Did you receive any feedback from Mr. Kelly about how the performance was in addition to what you said just now? Just that that was pretty much it. That was just the general interaction. He did give me, I'm sorry, objection comes from Jennifer. I'm sorry. Can she speak up a little into the microphone? Sure, I'm sorry. Yes, I did receive feedback. He told me I did a great job. He gave me pointers on how I handled the stage, what he thought went well, and it was just him just critiquing, how the performance went. And how did that make you feel? Yo, man. Y'all lucky I love y'all because this goddamn Miss Appeting is. Oh, God. And how did that make you feel? It made me feel accomplished. It made me feel happy that I was successful. It made me happy that such a successful person was, saying I was gifted. So I was excited. Now, before we go further, I would like to ask you, Your Honor, well, first I would ask you, if you were to see Robert Kelly today, would you be able to recognize him? Yes. Your Honor, I ask if you can instruct everyone in the courtroom to remove their mask. Remove your mask, please. Everyone in the courtroom, Your Honor. Can you please take a look around the courtroom and let me know if you do see Robert Kelly in the courtroom? Yes. And can you describe an article of clothing that he is wearing and where he is located in the courtroom? A navy blue blazer. And where is he located in the courtroom? On the left side. Is he behind me? Yes. Seated at the table? Correct. Can you further describe any? So stipulate it's Mr. Kelly. All right. Stipulate she identified him. Thank you, Your Honor. So did you see? I believe everyone can put their mask back on. Did you start to see Mr. Kelly more after the concert where you performed? Yes. How and where did you start to see him more? I would see him at his basketball gym, at the studio, or restaurants. And would you be with Stephanie at this time? Yes. Object to leading from Jennifer. Okay, don't lead. Give her, ask open questions. Thank you. Who would you be with at this time? My Aunt Stephanie. About how old were you during this time frame? About 13, 14. Why was you said you were with Stephanie at these times when you saw him at the studio, at the gym, at restaurants, things like that? Yes. Why was Stephanie around him so much? Because they were working together musically. Did they also have a personal relationship? Yes. A romantic relationship? Yes. And from whom did you learn that they had this personal romantic relationship? Stephanie. Were you and Stephanie close? Yes. How close would you describe that relationship? We were very close. I really looked up to her. I admired her, what she did musically. And I kind of considered her like my aunt, but like really a close friend as well. What would you do while you had mentioned that you were seeing them both. You were seeing And y'all don't think I'm sounding illiterate, y'all. This is how the fuck this shit is written. Like the prosecutor keeps changing what she's saying mid-sentence. What you would do while you were space. You had mentioned that you were seeing them both space. You were seeing space. When you would see Mr. Kelly, you were with Stephanie at the studio. Is that one of the places you said? Yes. And when you were at the studio, space. First of all, what studio are you talking about? Do you recall the names of the studios? Bass Productions and Chicago Tracks. Those are two separate places, as you recall? Correct. What will you do while you were with Stephanie and Mr. Kelly at the studio? Fucking bugs. God damn it. Those are two separate places, as you recall, correct? What would you do while you were with Stephanie and Mr. Kelly at the studio? I would be there just kind of like hanging out, watching them make music or producing or her recording. Did you spend more time at one of those studios or the other? I would say I spent most of the time at Chicago Tracks. About how many times in your lifetime, so not just that time, but in your lifetime, have you been to that Chicago Track studio? Many times, like tens or the hundreds? Hundreds. Can you describe the studio, please? Yes. So when you pull up to the studio, there's a silver gate. There was rock gravel. There was like you called to get into the gate. There's a black door. You walked inside of the studio. There was like a little customer service area where the person who opens the door was. There was a room, stairways, and recording rooms. What type of rooms did you say they were? Lounges and recording rooms. What's a lounge room? This lady is working my nerves. The lounges were where people would sleep or where people would wait before they were into sessions. And what's space? Can you describe to the jury what the studio is or what it looks like, the studio rooms? There was a lounge area that had a bathroom in it with couch, TV, refrigerator. There was one that was like an office space with chairs, desks, and file cabinets. Question. In the studio rooms themselves, what were those like? What did they look like? The studio rooms? Yes. Where the studio took place? I mean, the recording took place? Is that where the recording took place? In the studio rooms? Yes. So they're like vocal booths. They're where vocal booths and like other lounges. Yeah. Before your testimony today, did you review some of the photos that you identified as photos of Chicago Tracks studio? I did. And where was that studio located? On Larrabee. Is that in Chicago? Uh-huh. I'm going to hand these to you. Now I'm showing you a group of photographs. Their government's exhibits 114. Does that say 114? Yes. All right, 114 A through T. Please take a moment to look through these photographs and let me know when you're finished. Sure. I'm done. Thank you. Now, do you, now you, space, do governments exhibit 114T? Are those, are those the photos that you reviewed prior to your testimony that you were just talking about? Yes. And do those photos truly and accurately depict portions of the interior and exterior of track studios as they looked during the time frame you were describing? And that's 1996, 97, when you were 12 or 13 years old? Yes. I'm showing you what's been marked as 114. Do you see that there? Yes. What is depicted in 114A? That's the entry to Chicago Track Studio. What is depicted in this photo? That's the call box to the enter the gate. And do you have to use that call box every time you were trying to get inside the actual building? Yes. What is depicted in C? That's the doorway to get into the studio. So after you get through the gate, then you get to this door? Yes. What's in D? That's the gate of the studio. And so the main entrance is on the other side of this. Showing you what's been marked as A. What's depicted here? I'm sorry, E. That is like the hallway, and it's like the office area of the studio. So the audio, so the doorway is opening into what room? The office. We will get closer in with depicted F. That's inside the office space. And this is it as it appears in the time frame that you were visiting Chicago tracks? Yes. What is it depicted in G? That is another angle of the office space. What are the things that are on the walls there? Those are different albums that were very successful. And you are saying they were very successful. How do you know that? Is there anything in the photos that that's how it is when it's like a platinum multi-dollar sales record? Are you familiar with this record or album that is depicted here? Yes. What is that? That's the 12 play album. Can you take that down for 1 second? Show them what's been previously marked at 120. That's the album cover of 12 play album. That's a blown up picture of what you just identified on the wall in the office. Yes. What is depicted in 120? That is the album cover of 12 play. And that's the album that you saw on the wall in the office. Yes. Is this how Mr. Kelly looked when you met him? Yes. Meaning his shape and build. Correct. Did he have a bald head when you met him? I'm sorry. When you first met him for the first time? Yes. Was his hair always bald or no? He would wear it bald, and sometimes he would wear it like in a fade. So go back to tracks. All right. So we left off government's exhibit I. What do exhibit H? This is another angle of the office space. And again, there are albums. The album 12 play is up. Yes. And other places in the office. Yes. Showing you what's government exhibit 114I. This is another angle of the office. Are these this photo here, are you aware of? Yes. What is this? Yes, those are different album covers that were also very successful. Again, what's this? What is depicted here? This is the lounge area. Is it near the office or a part of the office that we just saw? It's connecting, yes. Again, what's depicted here? And K, the office is in the background, and this is a part of the lounge space. And those lounge space, and whose office were those? Robert's. And when you say Robert, and you can refer to him as Robert in your testimony, that's fine. But when you say Robert, you mean the defendant, Robert Kelly? Is that correct? Yes. Showing you what's been marked as government's L. What's depicted here? The lounge area. Again, off of, is this Robert Kelly's lounge area? Yes. And office? What's depicted here on the walls and on the space, in the furniture? There's remote controls. That's the couch that was in Robert's lounge, as well as different accompaniments that are hanging from different album covers or music that he produced. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later. But is this a couch that was in his lounge that you just mentioned in the other photo? Yes. What is depicted in O? That's the lounge space, and that's Robert's lounge space, and in the bathroom. And would you space, when you were at the studio during this time, 1996, 1997, were you space, did you use this lounge area? Were you up in this room and were you up in here in this room and used this bathroom? Yes. What is depicted in P? That's the TV that was in the lounge as well as the bathroom area. What is in Q? That the bathroom in the lounge. What's in R? The shower that was in the lounge in the bathroom. What is in S? That is another space that was a part of the studio that was used for working out or practicing, or another lounge area. And finally, thank you. What's in T? That is the office space. All right. So turning back to when you would visit the studios with Stephanie, you mentioned that you were watching them do their things in terms of making music. Is that correct? Yes. And what space, how was it for you to have those experiences? It was really nice to see them working and collaborating. And what were your intent and what were your interactions with Mr. Kelly at this time in the studio? And again, this is the time we're talking about 96, 97, when you first started going to the studio. I was just there and watching him as an artist, watching my aunt as an artist, and they were just producing music, and that was it at the time. Would you have conversations with Mr. Kelly? Yes. And what was the general nature of those conversations? What would y'all talk about? Well, we talk about basketball. We talk about music, my goals as an artist, or how I was doing in school. It was general conversations like that. About how many times a week were you visiting Chicago Track Studio again around this time early on? Maybe twice a week. Now, during this time period, again, when you were 12, 13 years old, what, if anything, did Stephanie instruct you to do to help foster a closer relationship between you and Mr. Kelly? She told me that I should ask him to be my godfather, and that I should sit on his lap and I should rub his head and ask him if he would play that role in my life. And you did that? Yes. And at that time, did you want to have a closer relationship with Mr. Kelly? Yes. And for what purpose at that time? He was just a person that I looked up to. I was very inspired by him, his talent. He was fun. We had a lot in common, basketball, music. So I thought it would be a good idea at the time. And where did this happen where you asked him to be your godfather? In the office at Chicago Track Studio. In that office, the pictures that we just went through. Yes. Oh, Sparkle, sit in his lap. Come on. Come on. This shit remind me of Asriel Clary telling her mother telling shimmy him, sit in his lap. Like they came from the same fucking school. Like, what the fuck? Pardon my French, man. I just can't believe grown-ass women is doing this, man. Sit in his lap. Disappointed. If this is true, Sparkle, I'm very disappointed, man. That I should sit on his lap and I should rub his head and ask him if he would play that role in my life. Wow. And where did this happen when you asked him to be your godfather? In the office at Chicago Track Studio. In that office, the pictures that we just went through, right? Yes. What was his response? He looked up at me and he kind of chuckled a little bit and he said, yes. Did you have other godparents at the time that were named by your parents? Yes. What, if anything, did you tell your parents about you asking Mr. Kelly to be your godfather? I just let them know that I have a new godfather. Obviously, they knew who it was. I let them know Robert agreed to be my godfather. And, you know, they thought it was cool. And you said your parents obviously knew who he was. How do you know they knew who he was? They knew who he was through my Aunt Stephanie. And at the time, she was recording with him. So they, from her being musically inclined and working with him and signing a record deal with him, that's how they became familiar with him. Stop asking this girl some stupid ass questions, man. Get that motherfucker. Keep playing, boy. You're gonna lose your life. And that's how I became familiar with him. And was your family working with Mr. Kelly at this point? No. But later he would come to work for Mr. Kelly. Wait, and was your father working with Mr. Kelly at this point? No, but later he would come to work for Mr. Kelly. Yes. Correct? Okay. I'm gonna catch this motherfucker. So you talked a little bit about you talked a little bit to us about what your interaction with Mr. Kelly were before he became your godfather. After that conversation, did your interactions with Mr. Kelly change? Yes. So first, let's talk about the conversation, the things that you guys would say to one another. How did the way I hate how this lady talk. How space. Did the way that he spoke to you change? Objection on the foundation grounds. What do you want? You want the date or a time? Well, just generally, some time period, Ms. Bonjean's saying. All right. The place and time established. what we're talking about with these conversations, to the prosecutor. Yes, Your Honor. So in the time frame after he asked you to be, they got this wrong. So in the time frame after you asked him to be the godfather, that's the time frame you were talking about, okay? And how old were you during that time? I was 13. Okay. So when you were 13 years old, did the way that Mr. Kelly spoke to you, speak to you in conversations after he became your godfather change? Yes. And about what's the time frame between the time he asked you to be his godfather? She asked him to be his godfather, to be her godfather, and the time that these conversations started to change. Weeks. And you were 13 years old, correct? Yes. So what was the nature of in which the conversations changed? It became sexual. How did it become sexual? Through his tone of voice and just the things he might say? No, you've goddamn Stephanie telling you to sit in that nigga lap. This is disgusting me, dog. I can't believe women do this shit. This is, yo. If I had a wife or a baby mother that did this, man, I would be to my fucking stomach, dude. This is bothering me. So, what was the nature of in which the conversation changed? It became sexual. How did it become sexual? Through his tone of voice and just the things that he might say. And how did they start first in person or on the phone? Oh man, now how would you come on? Did this sound coached on the phone? Like you would have to notice to change that up. And can you explain? Because she never said anything about any conversations on the phone. She's never said anything about them exchanging numbers. So you could tell this is an interview that was coached because she effed up and said, and how did they first start in person or on the phone? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. All right, on the phone. And can you explain to us what do you mean by things became sexual specifically? We would spend a lot of time on the phone together, and eventually he might ask me questions like, what color panties are you wearing? Anything else? Anything else in those conversations? That's all I can remember. That's not a sexual goddamn conversation. Things of that nature to start with. When you say things of that nature, were there other things that he would ask or tell you that was going on with him during the call? Here comes Ms. Bonjean. I'm going to object to the foundation. Is it a call? Specific call? She wants to know, I guess, on the telephone, or I guess you said it's on the call. So the question was, what are what are some of the other things that he would say that you said that were sexual in nature, that were different in the way that he started to talk to you? Oh, about my breast growing. Like I said, the content of my undergarments, like the color of my panties, or if I'm wearing, I need to be wearing bras and things like that. That's not a sexual fucking conversation. You tell a girl she need to be wearing bras. Those are health concerns. Not saying that he wasn't having a sexual conversation with her, but give us like some shit. Like the nigga told me, yo, I want to eat it. Or, you know, I want to have sex. These ain't sexual conversations. Did the conversations on the phone progress to something more sexual on the phone? Yes. What? Phone sex. Now, when you say phone sex, what do you mean? He would start asking me different questions sexually and would let me know that he was jacking off. Now, that's phone sex. Now, you said that about how long after the conversation about him being your godfather until these more sexual conversations occurred? About how much time? It was weeks. And did this type of talk continue in person? Yes. Where was Sparkle? Why are you not asking her, did she have this conversation with her aunt? Wait, you know what? I'm jumping the gun. Okay. And did this type of conversation talk, and did this type of talk continue in person? Yes. And where would these conversations happen? Again, you were 13 or 14 at this time, correct? Yes. I'm sorry. What was the question? Where were these conversations occur? Where would these conversations occur? It will occur at the studio, or if we were riding in a car or over the phone. Did the conversations about things that were sexual in nature that you described earlier, did that become more than just talk? Yes. When did that become more than just talk? Around the age 14. Can you tell us about the first time that talk became more than just talk? It became physical? Yes. We were in the studio and we were like watching TV and chilling after maybe a set that ended. And it began with like rubbing and touching. Can you be a little more specific about how the encounter happened, how it went down? Okay, so we were sitting in the office area of the studio on the couch, talking, watching TV. And obviously we had began phone sex at the time. So it would start out like a regular conversation, like we would be having during the phone sex. And this particular time, it became more physical with touching of the breast and him rubbing on. He was rubbing on what? Your genital area? Uh-huh. Objection and lead in. Yeah, don't lead. Have her describe it. Where was he rubbing? He was rubbing my vaginal area as well on himself. Was he rubbing himself? Yes. Where? On what part of his body? On his genital area. Were other people around? Let me back up. You said this happened in the studio. Is that correct? Yes. Chicago Tracks, right? Yes. And was it in one of the rooms that we saw on these pictures? Correct. Did you say that this happened on the couch? Is that what you said? Yes. And it was the couch that was in the pictures that we saw, right? Yes. And what time of day was this, if you recall? It was like the wee hours of the night, like after studio, after a studio session. Wait, the weary hours of the night. And she's 14 years old? Where are the parents? Where's Auntie? And Sparkle came after Aaliyah. Am I correct? So the weary hours of the morning, and she's there after just meeting him for weeks. They leaving her alone with this man. After Just me and him for fucking weeks. You kidding me, right? She tell her niece to get in this nigga lap and rub his head and leave him with just weeks later after the Aaliyah how are the parents not in jail, man? Yo, man. How is she in the weary hours? And what, R. Kelly's like 30 at this time? And what time of the day was this, if you recall? It was like the wee hours of the night, like after the studio session. Were other people around, meaning in that room or in that general vicinity? No. Where were your parents or Sparkle? How is it that you were able to be with him at night? You said this happened at like in the wee hours of the night. Is that what your testimony was? Yes. How was you able to be with him at night? Well, by him becoming my godfather and spending time around him casually, like at the gym, my parents felt comfortable enough to, at the time, let me stay there because I was there for the sessions. And it was like normal for me to be there watching him produce. And it was just when he became my godfather, I was able to do that without my aunt being involved. After weeks, come on, man. After weeks, I could see after a year, 6 months, after weeks, after weeks. Yo. I was able to do it without my aunt being involved. So your aunt wasn't around during this encounter that you are talking about that happened on the couch in his studio, or sorry, in his office space. Correct. Was Mr. Kelly married at the time? Yes. Did your parents know that you were at the studio at the time? Objection to what other people knew, unless she has a first, well, overruled. She can answer. Can you repeat the question for me, please? Sure, I can rephrase. Did you tell your parents you were at the studio at the time? No. They would think that I was going back to the house as with the family. Now, why would she be lying to her parents to where she's at if it was nothing wrong? Or is she fucking lying? How would her parents not know where she's at 14? Like she could lie and say, I'm going over here, and they not going to fucking know? Come on, man. Y'all got to be some better parents out here, according to these people. No, they would think that I was going back to the house as with the family in the weary hours of the night. Where the hell was the parents in the weary hours of the night? And when you say the family, who are you talking about? His wife. Wait, what? Can you repeat the question for me, please? Sure, I can rephrase. Did you tell your parents you were at the studio at the time? No. They would think that I was going back to the house as with the family. And when you say the family, who are you referring to? Who are you talking about? His wife. His wife, meaning Drea Kelly, Robert R. Kelly's wife? Yes. Wait. After the first sexual encounter that happened on the couch there in his office lounge, did things progress sexually? Yes. How and where? They started to progress vaginally. We started penetration. That was at the George Street house. This shit is knocking me out my seat. Before there was penetration, and you were talking about vaginal penetration, sexual intercourse, is that right? Yes. Before that, there were other sexual acts that you engaged in before getting to that point? Yes. Can you please describe those acts and where they would occur? They would occur at the studio or at the George Street house. And was it through like different sexual acts being filmed? They would occur at the studio or at George Street house. And it was through like different sexual acts being filmed. Okay, so let's back up a little bit and talk about the progression of time. So you were, again, this was around the time you were 13 or 14, correct? Objection. She testified to she was 14. Excuse me? Leading is inappropriate. Okay, all right. I guess she wasn't. Be more specific. 13 or 14. What age are you talking about? Yes, Your Honor. When you were 14, so you were talking about when you were 14 years old. Uh-huh. And Mr. Kelly was engaging you in sex acts when you were 14 years old. You explained that at some point it turned into vaginal intercourse. But before that, there were other sexual acts. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So what type of sexual acts before intercourse? It would be like oral sex, kissing, hugging, sucking on breasts, sucking on, oral. How would you know what to do with him sexually? Because he would tell me what to do. Were you familiar or had you heard of sexual requests that he was asking of you? No. You had mentioned that, so at some, and you were, these acts happening, this lady, how she talk? You mentioned that, space. So at space. And where were these sex acts happening? Again, before there was sexual intercourse, at the studio and at the George Street home. How old were you when you began having sexual intercourse? How old were you when he began having sexual intercourse with you? 15. How do you know? How is it that you know you were 15? Because that's when I lost my virginity. Now, you just told us that you would have these sexual intercourses at the George Street house and the studio. Now, how was it that you, that you would meet up with Mr. Kelly to engage in sexual acts? Can you repeat the question for me, please? Yeah, me too, please. Fucking lady. Yes, I can. Yes. You had mentioned that you had sexual acts with Mr. Kelly at the studio and at his home at 1010 George Street, right? Is that correct? Yes. And you weren't living at either of those places, correct? No. At this time, again, 14, 15 years old, correct? So how is it that you all hooked up and connect to meet up to have sex or engage in sex acts? Usually I would get space. Go to the basketball gym with my friends, parents. No, go to the basketball gym with my parents or my aunt still. And we would leave there, maybe go eat or go back to the studio. And then it would be like weekend situation where my parents knew that I was going to be going to my godparents' house for the weekend. So they would pretty much drop me off and then leave. Okay, and how would you communicate with Mr. Kelly in advance of these times where you would meet up? It would be over the phone. I would just ask him if it was okay to come over for the weekend. And he would say yes. And he would say, you can meet me here, whether it be the studio, the gym, or wherever it was pretty much happening at the time. How would the invitations go? Would he sometimes invite you to come over, or would you just sometimes ask to come over? Yes. She just asked you two questions. And were you meeting up so that you can engage in these sex acts? Yes. What would you discuss? Would you discuss that on the phone? No. Where would you say that? Where would you say that your parents would drop you off? Bonjean objects. I'm going to object. We're talking about, I don't know if she's 1 minute, she's talking about 13, 14, 15. There's no foundation, and there needs to be some foundation. Your Honor, we're talking about when she was 14 years old. No, we weren't. She said 15. Leading up, I was finishing my sentencing leading up to when she was 15 and engaged in sexual intercourse. All right. We haven't gone. That's the time frame we're in right now. Okay, we're asking whether she was 14 or 15. Make sure. I think that's what we need to know. Yes. When you ask specific acts, yes, Your Honor. Okay. So we had talked about sexual intercourse occurred when you were 15 years old. Prior to that, you were 14. He was engaging you in oral sex and other sex acts, right? Yes. So between the time you were 14 years old up until the time you were 18 years old, was Mr. Kelly engaging you in sexual acts? Yes. Including oral sex, correct? Correct. Sexual intercourse, yes. Is that right? Uh-huh. What were some of the places that Mr. Kelly would engage you in sexual acts during that time period? At the question, hold on. At 14 up until you were 18. Oh, at the studio, on the bus, at the George Street house. Are there any other places that this occurred between the time you were 14 years old to the time you were 18 years old? Hotels. Where would hotels be? Different places, Florida, New York, different states. About what was the frequency of the sex acts? Very frequent. We're talking, let's talk about in terms of like times a day or times a week. I'm going to object. Again, this is between the age of 14 to 18. That's an entire 4-year period. Between the ages of 14 and 18, yes, Your Honor. She has knowledge of what happened to her during those years. She can testify. All right, ask her that. We'll go ahead. Objection is overruled. Go ahead and ask her the questions. About how many times did Mr. Kelly engage you in sexual intercourse during that period from 14 years old to 18 years old? I'm going to object. The intercourse started at 15. So the question is misleading. I would ask for a proper foundation. This is the details. These details are important, at least they are to us. The court, I believe it was 15 to 18, Miss Appleton. Yes, from 15 to 18. How many times did Mr. Kelly engage you in sexual intercourse? Innumerable times. I'm sorry. Like uncountable a lot of times. Are you talking about tens or hundreds of times? Hundreds. So it's safe to say that you can recall every single instance and every single occurrence. That is correct? Yes. You mentioned you had mentioned just now in your testimony that between the ages of 14 and 18, you were engaging in sexual intercourse that happened at Chicago Track Studio. Is that correct? Yes. Those photos that were just seen earlier, Chicago Track Studio, did sexual intercourse occur in any of those rooms? Yes. Which ones? All of them. The office where there was a massage table? Yes. And did sexual acts occur on the massage table? Yes. And the room, which was, I believe, did you say it was a lounge room? Yes. In that room as well? Yes. Now, when you strike that, did Mr. Kelly ever provide you with alcohol during the times you were together? Yes. Objection to the foundation again. Your Honor, again, she was there. She can testify to what happened to her. If you would like the time frame, we can zero in on that. It's just foundation. Just foundation, Judge. A little bit of foundation. This is years of time period. She wants to know when, I guess, the pinpoint, the judge is saying, she wants to know when. I guess pinpoint the date when they started drinking alcohol. I guess would be a good way to start. Can you pinpoint the time you began giving your alcohol the first time? 14. What effect, if any, did alcohol have for you? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What effect, if any, did the alcohol have on you? I don't remember a lot. I used to consume a lot of it during that time, so it affected me. It helped me loosen up. It kind of took me away from the moment. During the time you were between 14 and 18, and you were engaging in sex acts with Mr. Kelly, what, if anything, were you shown during sex acts or leading up to sex acts? I was shown other pornography tapes. When you say pornography, what do you mean? Can you describe what you mean you were shown? It would just be on the television, other pornography going on television while he and I was engaging in sexual activity. And who was, if you can recall, were you able to identify any people that were in the pornographic images? Yes, some of the people I knew. Without saying, did you know the females and the males or just the males? I knew both. Was one Were some of them people objection, Your Honor, to leading? Go ahead. Who were some of the people that were depicted? I don't know. That's not who. Wait a minute. I'm going to object to the relevance of who was depicted as well, Judge. She started to lead. I objected. Start the question with who? I guess I would. Okay. Who was depicted in the videos of pornography that you saw that Mr. Kelly would show you when you were engaging in sex acts? Objection, relevance, overruled. Robert. Now, at some point, when again, during the time period when you were 14, 15 years old, did Mr. Kelly ask you to invite your friends to engage in sexual activity? Yes. What, if anything, would he say to encourage this? He would just kind of like make an advance, like, what's up with this person or that person? Like, how would you feel if they were included on our sexual activity? Or he would like kind of crush on them a little bit. He would kind of crush on them. Is that what you said? Yes. What does that mean? Just like be kind of flirty or whatever remark he was making towards that person to me. What was your response? I told him, yes, I would basically pitch the idea. Were two of these friends that you pitched the idea to Pinky and Brittany? Yes. And now Pinky and Brittany are not their real names. Is that correct? Yes, correct. Those are pseudonyms, right? Yes. Is Pinky your age? Yes. When was the first time Mr. Kelly engaged you and Pinky in a sex act at the same time? How old were you? I don't know, about 14, 15. And where did this occur? At the George Street house. And can you explain in detail that encounter? We had went in the studio. We ended up going to the George Street house. It was a weekend, and we led up to it by having like different phone conversation or different like flirty encounters if we would be around each other. And when we were at the George house, we started engaging in sexual activity all together. And at this point, this first instance, was it a sexual intercourse? It was intimate, yes. At that time, we were engaging in sexual intercourse, yes. When you say intercourse, do you mean actually vaginal intercourse or oral sex and fondling and things like that? Yes, all of that. After that time, did you have multiple sexual encounters together with Mr. Kelly and Pinky? Yes. How old were you? I was probably about 15 and 16. Okay, so when the events occurred, if they were prior to 15, were they sexual intercourses or were they other acts? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? So when the acts occurred when you were prior to the age 15, was it sexual intercourse or other sexual conduct? Other sexual conduct. And from the time you were 15 until after, it included sexual intercourse. Is that correct? Yes. And again, about how many times did you have sexual intercourse with Mr. Kelly and Pinky during the time frame when you were 14, between 14 and 18? It was several times. At some point, did these sexual encounters between the three of you, did they stop? Yes. And why did they stop? Because I had found out that Pinky was seeing Robert outside of us engaging together. So she and I stopped being friends. And when you say seeing Mr. Kelly, what do you mean? Like sexually, like outside of us all being together, she started seeing him separately without my knowledge. About how old were you when that happened? About 16. 16? Is that what you said? Yes. And you said that Pinky is your same age. So she was about 16 when this happened too? Yes. Now, regarding Brittany, is Brittany your same age or is she older? She's older. Do you recall how old you were when Mr. Kelly engaged you and Brittany in the same sex act at the same time? About 15. Do you recall that first act occurred? Do you recall where that first act occurred? It occurred at the studio. I'm going to show you a photo showing you what's been previously marked at Government's Exhibit 108. Do you see 108 on the screen? Yes. And again, using her pseudonym, who is the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 108? Brittany. How long can you explain again? Where did you meet Brittany? We met at school. And so that was back when you were how old? I was about 15. And did you know Brittany? Well, are you still in contact with Brittany from time to time over the years until the age of now? You are 37. Yes. So you would be able to recognize her if you saw her. Yes. And again, who is depicted in the photo? Brittany. And does it truly and accurately depict Brittany? Yes. Your Honor, the government moves to admit 108 and publish it to the jury. No objection. Okay, no objection is admitted, published. And again, who's depicted in 108? Brittany. And again, forgive me, did you say how old you were when Mr. Kelly engaged you and Brittany in sex acts at the same time? About 15. About how many sexual encounters did you have with Mr. Kelly and Brittany? Multiple. The three of y'all together? Multiple. Between 5 and 10 or much more than 10? Between 5 and 10. Can you describe the sex acts that occurred between Brittany, Mr. Kelly, and yourself? It involved vaginal and oral sex. And where did these sexual acts take place? Usually at the studio. And at some point, did they stop? Yes. Why did they stop? Because similar to the same situation, she and I stopped being friends because she started seeing Robin separately from all of us being involved or being around each other without my knowledge. And when you say seeing, what do you mean? Sexually, just hanging out. Your Honor, if we're going to break, now might be a good time. If this is a good time to break, we will break for lunch. Okay. That's the end of that one. Okay, let me continue. All right. So they come back. Jane, can you remove your mask? Okay, thank you. I pull the microphone nice and close. Now, you explained in your testimony earlier that the conversations changed to sex talk with Mr. Kelly. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. Can you explain to the jury if you know why you all engaged in sex talk at that time? Again, after he became my godfather, there became an attraction and he started making advances, and that's how it unfolded. And why did you engage in sex talk with him? I just kind of went with the flow. He kind of threw me off. I wasn't exactly sure how to respond or how I should handle it. So I just was being responsive. And how did you review Mr. Kelly at the time when the sex talk started and you participated in it? How did you view him at that time? As an authoritative figure, what do you mean? Can you explain that? Well, he was an adult. and he was somebody that I looked up to. So he was an authoritative figure over me at the time, aside from the sexual acts or anything like that. So again, it went from the flow. So again, I went with the flow. Okay, when we talked in your testimony, you explained to the jurors that you started to engage in sex acts. And again, you were about before you turned 15 when the sexual intercourse began. Okay, so we're talking about that time frame between when you were 14 years old. Why? And you said you engaged in sex acts with Mr. Kelly. Why did you participate in those sex acts? It was out of intimidation. And again, like he was an authoritative figure, so I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to say no. I felt uncomfortable, but at the same token, I looked up to him. I did see him as an authoritative figure, so I just kind of went along with things, and then it went somewhere, somewhat became normal. Okay, so when you say it somewhat became normal, what do you mean? What did you start feeling for him? I started having feelings for him. I was attracted to him in that way, and things were happening so frequently. It was kind of just like being done out of repetition. And when you say things were happening so frequently, what are you talking about? It's sexual involvement, engagement, our interactions. Okay, and then again, so we're talking about the period of when you were 14 and sex acts were occurring. And then you explain to the jury that you were 15 that progressed into sexual intercourse. Is that correct? Yes. And you had explained that you knew you were 15 because that's when you had lost your virginity. Is that correct? Correct. And just to be clear, to whom did you lose your virginity to? Robert. And how were you feeling about him at the time when you first engaged in sexual intercourse when you were 15? I developed feelings for him, and I developed feelings for him, and I felt good about our interactions. What are some of the things that, if any, he was saying to make you feel good about your interactions? That he loved me, that he would take care of me, that he was my protector. And what were your responses to those things that he was saying about being that he would protect you and that he loved you? I would respond in the same way. I love you too. And I would feel good about the level of comfort that he was giving me. So it made me feel good. And you also talked about there was a point where you were willing to bring your friends into the sexual acts and sexual intercourse with Mr. Kelly. Were you comfortable? I take that back. Where did you do those things? Because I consider myself to be a submissive person and I wanted to give him what he wanted or required. What were the ways in which you encourage your friends? Again, we talking about specifically Pinky and Brittany to join you all in the sex acts. It would start off like joking conversation of me having a crush on him or just discussing different interactions that me and him had just to gauge like how they might feel or if they would want to be included. When we were talking about Brittany earlier, you mentioned that she was older than you. How much older than you was Brittany or is Brittany? I believe a year. So when you engaged your first engage in sex acts with your, was it that your testimony that occurred, you were 15? Yes. And so Brittany have been how old? 16. And you can please, and can you please explain to the jury that first experience, if you will, with Brittany, how you engaged into the sex acts with Mr. Kelly? It would start out with me just joking, saying like, oh, I have a crush on him. And he's like, oh, I like his music. I like when he says this or that with the music or that. It was like things that would have me to say that would make them like put something on their minds to engage with us. And when you recall the first instance, Brittany, with that, the first time it happened with Brittany, it was Chicago Tracks in the lounge of the studio. Okay, if you recall, can you describe that interaction? We were all sitting on the couch after the studio session, watching TV, as I usually go, or maybe listening to some music that had just got finished up. And then we would start by like him saying, I want to see you do this to Brittany. I would like to see you do this to Brittany, or I want to see this or that. And that's when the emotions would start, or the interactions would start sexually. And when you say he was saying, I want to see you do this, or I want to see you do that, what were those things? Can you describe them? Kissing, grabbing on each other's breasts, or like grinding and on, or like grinding and holding each other by the waist and like dancing, dance moves. Okay. And would you do those things as he instructed? Yes. Why were you willing to do those things? Again, I was thinking I was in love at the time and I was being submissive and I wanted to give him what he wanted and I didn't want to upset him or make him feel like I wasn't cooperating. So I went along with it. Now, you had mentioned that you had feelings. Again, when you were 14 and 15, but you had feelings for him that you loved him. Is that correct? Yes. And what, if anything, or some of the things that he was doing at this time when you were 14, 15, and 16 that made it seem like he was, or you all were in love with one another? Just the time that he would allow me to be around him through certain emotions or like certain things he would do for me, like if it was my birthday or if anything that I wanted, he just made it seem like it was available to me. So not just materialistic, more emotional support with anything that I was going through, whether it was school, my group, or friends. He was just there for me. He was supportive. What about events? Did he attend any events that you were participating in? Yeah, yes. It would be like if my group was doing something, or if I have a basketball game, things of that nature. And what would he do at your music groups or basketball games, if anything? He would just show up and be supportive. And, it looked really cool from my friend's perspective that I had this celebrity showing up for me. So it was more so like that. How did he make you feel when he showed up? When he showed up for you? I mean, he feel good, excited. What, if anything, did he buy you in terms of gifts? Objection, foundation. All right, give me some time frame. Yes, Your Honor. During the time frame when you were 14, 15, 16 years old, what, if anything, did Mr. R. Kelly buy you in terms of gift? He bought me jewelry. He bought me a PT Cruiser. And again, just during the time period, you were 14, 15, 16. You said jewelry? Yes. What did he buy you? He bought me a cross necklace. How old were you when that when he brought you that cross necklace time frame. I was about 17 or 18. She asked you, and during the time period when you were 14, 15, 16, what did he buy you? You said I was about 17 or 18 when he bought you the jewelry. Okay, and when you mentioned that he bought you a car, yes. And when did he purchase a car for you? When I turned 16? Where were you when he purchased his car? In Florida? Okay, what type of car was it? A black PT Cruiser. You said you were in Florida? Yes. How did it come back to Illinois with you at some point? Wait, how? Did the car come back to Illinois with you at some point? Yes. How do you recall it got back there? I'm not actually sure. What did you tell your friends about this car? I told them that my godfather brought it for me. He brought me a new car, and I was excited to take them for a ride. And that was pretty much it. Where were you allowed to tell people about this car that he bought for you? Yo, my God. She just said that. Yo. Objection to the foundation of that question. Allowed by whom? What, if anything, did Mr. Kelly tell you about who you could share with the car? Objection. The car or the information about the car? I don't see the basis of the objection. You could clarify if you wish. Go ahead. What, if anything, did Mr. Kelly say you could tell people about the car? Just only share with my close friends and family that I was not allowed to have any guys in my car. You mentioned a necklace that Mr. Kelly purchased for you. You said, how old were you when you got it? You were 17 or 18 years old? Yes, I was about 17 or 18. Did you already have a cross necklace? Yes. Who gave you the cross necklace that you already had when Mr. Kelly gave you a second cross necklace? My parents. When did they give you that? When did they give you that necklace? When I was about 13. Were your parents with you when Mr. Kelly brought you the PT Cruiser for you? Yes. Did they question why he purchased the car for you? No, they didn't question it. They were excited for me. During this time period when you were engaging in sex acts and sexual intercourse with Mr. Kelly, so you were 14, 15, 16. That's the time period we're talking about right now. Who, if anyone, did you tell that you were engaging in these sex acts and sexual intercourse? No one knew besides Brittany and Pinky. And why is that? Because I was told to keep it a secret and not to share with anyone. Who told you to keep it a secret and not to share with anyone? Robert. When did he tell you this? As soon as we became involved sexually. So this was around the time you were having sex when you were 14. I'm going to object to the leading. How about when did that happen? That's the appropriate question, not the leading. Yes, it's the leading. So go ahead. Yes, Your Honor. When did this happen when he first instructed you not to tell anyone? When I was about 13 or 14, when we became sexual. Okay, when you say became sexual, what does that include? The phone conversations? Do you include that when you are saying we became sexual? Yes. Did this instruction in terms of keeping it quiet, a secret, I think those were your words. Did that ever change? Can you rephrase your question for me, please? What did he tell you about keeping the sexual acts a secret? That it was very important that I didn't share our sexual relationships with anyone because he could get in a lot of trouble and he wanted to protect that side of things. So he was just overly stressing how important It was that I remain loyal to him and not share this involvement with anyone. Did you want to share that with anyone at that time? Again, we're talking about when you were 14, 15, 16 years old. Yes. At the time, did you want to share with? I wanted to share with my friends. I thought about sharing it with my aunt, and eventually I did. So you telling me Sparkle knew about this shit? But not at the time when you were 14, 15, and 16. Is that right? No, not at that time. And in your mind, all right, Sparkle, you off the hook on that part. No, not at that time. And in your mind, why did you not share with those friends that you wanted to share with when you were 14, 15, 16? Because I was afraid. I'm going to object. You mean aside from Pinky and the other Brittany? I'm just confused at this point. Your Honor, if we could not have speaking objections, well, I don't see a basis for the objection. Well, she said her friends. I would object on the foundation. It's not clear to me because she previously testified that she was having threesomes with Pinky. Just a minute, let me see. The objection is overruled, but let's go on. The question was, what did you want to share with your friends when you were 14, 15, and 16 about the sexual relationships with Mr. Kelly? I'm also wanting to share the relationship because I was excited. Again, I thought I loved this person, and it wasn't exciting. It was exciting, but a secret. So there's times other than Brittany or Pinky that I was close to people that I would have liked to share what was happening between us, but I didn't feel comfortable doing that because I was told to keep it a secret. And you had said that you were scared and that's where you had stopped before the judge. I'm going to object. That is leading. Objection. She answered the question. Let's move on. All right. Let's move on to when Mr. Kelly and you were engaged in sex acts and sexual intercourse. Again, at the time frame that shifted was 14, 15, 14 and 15 years old. Did Mr. Kelly ever record you to engage in the sexual activities? Yes. And when did that start? When I was 14. Do you recall the first time that he recorded you to engage in sex acts? Not the first time, but I recall around the time it started happening. Yes. Okay. How were the recordings made? What equipment was being used to make the recordings? They were lighting cameras. It was lighting and camcorders. How did you feel about being recorded? I was uncomfortable. Why did you go along and do it if you felt uncomfortable? Because again, it was an authoritative figure over me, and I didn't feel comfortable telling him no, or I didn't look forward for. I didn't want to look awkward for engaging and not participating. So I went with the flow of whatever he said to do. Where did the recordings take place? Again, when you were 14, 15, and 16 years old. It would be on the bus, at the studio, whether it was Chicago Tracks or Bass Productions, as well as the George Street House. Was there, what if, was there any setup to these recordings? Would you discuss them in advance? No. When the first time there was a recording, how did you know that you were being recorded? How did you know that it was happening? Because he let me know that he wanted to videotape me. And when we were in the room, he was like setting everything up as far as like, again, the lighting and the camcorder and things like that. Was there, why was there, sorry, you said he was setting up the camcorder. What would he do to set up the camcorder? Put the tape in, position the camera a certain way, just getting a certain like angles with the lighting. Oh, okay. So prior to your testimony today, did you view some of the recordings that Mr. Kelly made of him and you engaging in sex acts? Yes. Specifically, did you view 3 separate and distinct sexual encounters? Yes. Where did these sexual encounters? Oh, let me back up. When I say 3 separate, distinct, were those different times at different times? Yes. Where did these 3 sexual encounters occur? One was in the living room, one was in the George Street house, and one was upstairs in the bedroom of the George Street house, and the other was in the log cabin of the George Street house. And when you say the log cabin of the George Street house, what room is that? It's like the basement, the log cabin area. Okay. What is there any type of equipment, something that's in that room? Yes, a jacuzzi. Okay. And you saw that in the picture that we reviewed, right? Yes. No, we did not review those earlier. You saw those in the picture we reviewed prior to your testimony. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Now, before we discuss these recordings, I like for us to get on the same page about the location that you are talking about. I'm showing you what's being already admitted into evidence as Exhibit 112A. All right. You see that on the screen in front of you, 112A, right? Yes. Do you recognize the building that is depicted in 112A? Yes. What is that? That's the Georgia Street house. I mean, the George Street house. And again, you know what? I got to take a break. I need a break. I'm hungry, and this shit is long as hell, and I am hungry. Let me write down what page I'm on. I wish I could see all y'all comments because I would love to know what y'all are saying right now. I'm going to take a break on this one. I will come back and get into this because when I tell you, the girl talk about having threesomes with his wife, and I think his aunt and her aunt, but we'll get to that. But he's going to be found guilty on messing with a minor. The pornography part of it, I don't know because they don't have the original tape. Man, yeah, I know y'all want me to keep going, but I got to get something to eat, y'all. My stomach is growling over here. You know what I'm saying? So I got to get something to eat. Maybe I'll come back. If not, I will definitely do it early tomorrow. I promise y'all, I will finish early tomorrow. But I got to get something to eat. Shout out to those who cashed at me. Y'all just brought me dinner. Carmen and who's the other person? Carmen and Christopher, good looking. Appreciate y'all. Also, Aaron, I appreciate you, Aaron. Federeal, Wayne Scott, Sean L. Thank y'all very much. Make a brother feel appreciated. And thank you, Queen Diva. I appreciate you too. So yeah, y'all, I'm gonna come back. Depending on how quick I eat this food, I might come back tonight. If not, I will I'll come back tomorrow. And then after I go through this, maybe we should open up the panel, and because I would love this. Like, I'm gonna go back and watch this live right now while I'm eating, because I want to look at all y'all comments, because I see it's a hell of a lot of comments. So I'm gonna go back and watch these comments as I eat. And if I feel up to it, I'm gonna come back on tonight. If not, definitely tomorrow early. All right. Show no joke. Y'all already know what it is, man. It's truth be told all day, every day, even on your birthday. All right. Holla back in a second.
Oh yeah. My man had to come through and make sure it went through. Y'all niggas is in trouble. Choke no joke. I ain't no joke, the mixtape. We here now. You already know. Let's go. Choke chillin', got away from them billin'. Ain't shit really changed though, I'm still that villain. I'm making money with rhyme, fuck black on black crime. Beef and money don't mix, like Muslims and swine. I'm talking milk, penicillin, y'all be illin'. Y'all be thinking y'all killers, with y'all school face grillin'. Kick that bullshit to me, y'all be wet though like Bruce Lee. And Brandon and Hearst on the highway to heaven. Man, you making mad threats and stuck in one section. I'm OBP like Naughty, making connections. Talking under your breath, get you something you don't need. 2 fully loaded Macs, filled up with heat. Nigga, you sweeter than 30 days for a body. Pop shit to these niggas, see me walk by me. But I ain't looking for no beef, I don't eat bologna. But I bring a whole cow if you run up on me. Shiesty, try me and hype me to peel your wig back like 10 cent icy. Bring it, stop bluffing, I got you threats, they mean nothing. I respond like Bond, I come through, I'm bombing. Playing bodegas, flipping Montega. You tan in the Jacks, I tan in Jamaica. Faker, wouldn't bust if he raped ya. Your chick out blazed her, hit it like Jada. While you blew up a pager, had to breathe like Vader. Your star at war with the lightsaber. I'm here to lyrically tear your rear, nigga, you a spear. I jack you up, now you outta here. Throw me on the 600. Now fucking nigga humming, blowing down in 5 with a bad bitch blunted. I take it there. Y'all niggas don't want it. Y'all niggas don't want it. Y'all niggas don't want it with no joke. Who you thought it be? Represent the NYC. Bring it on if you niggas want some of me. Have y'all niggas feeling it like Jay-Z. No joke, who you thought it be? Represent the NYC. Bring it on if you niggas want some of me. Bronze King like the LORD-FINE-SC. And that bullshit y'all do, y'all niggas don't stress me. Oh yeah, and you already know, Eden War what it is. Federeal. Don't follow those cats. Choke don't choke. You already know. Let's go out the gray go. Now I'm out the game. Feel good not pitching in the hood. And I really don't think I could go back to selling crack and stashing them packs in my ass. I maintain weekly money the same. And nah, I don't go through them games. Niggas testing my brain with them triple beams filled with change. Pot crack, grams in the drain. Get hit with the fake exchange. like baking soda flour after being on Broadway for hours. Getting knocked, being back at start. Niggas testing if I got heart. Pushing me to pop some shots, just stop the ball before the start. Old lady with the binocs, give description to cops. Why they try to tear us apart with that good cop, bad cop. I ain't going for the game, he ain't tell you a thing. Your partners with them saying the same. You can tighten them cuffs till you see veins. Stop fucking yanking them down. They might fuck you if you ain't sane. And nigga never sniff cocaine. And I don't care what game or part of the area you claim. Gray Scarface, you must be insane. Nigga, Tony fucked the boss Dane. His right hand man, he's slain to get his back blown out the game. Do it on the low, let nobody know. No pillow talk to home. And if he step on your toes, don't bust a blame. Cause everybody will know. Or get out the game. They say that change is good. It's a lot of stress in the hood, and I know if you could, you would. Get out the game, but you stuck in that time. Where the nigga in public like Shine. For a witness to drop a dime. For self-defense, do or die. Celebs doing time. Mike Vick on the child line. Even Kobe, Jason Williams, Gage, kick like Shinobi. Little Kim for perjury. You know you done fucked up, right? You know you done fucked up, right? Let's go. When it's late night, make sure it's packed tight. And when you take those flights, never eye the Jake in sight. And shake them fuckers when they dead to right. Making a fifth go rumble. Because of stick up trouble. Blasting your gap for a cat, for in fact, for some crap that don't involve you. For some dudes that don't love you, all they wanna do is pawn you until you go down. And don't do shit for you when you lock down, or even when you touch down. But they tell you to go to the pound. The same block that gave you a pound. Years in the pen, now you live it again. What mind state are you in? When you back it for 10, and you was just waiting for a teen to come home to relive it again. Entrapment should be a sin. The way they reel us in, parole us to a revolving door to bring us in. This shit is insane. The game is insane. The game will fuck with your brain. That's why I'm out the game. Yeah. Just get out the game, man. I know they told y'all there's only 2 ways out. Jail and death. Nah, just get out, nigga. Just get out, man. It's easy. Just walk away, nigga. If they care about you, they'll let you go. If you in the game and you want to go and get a better life and they won't let you walk away, what do that say? Get out the game, nigga. You wanna sleep easy, nigga? Look at these rap niggas, nigga. You wanna be the next rapper? Trapper, clapper, federal indictment rapper? Huh? I keep telling y'all niggas, man, get out the game, man. Joke no joke. Grego, you already know. The beast is chemical, baby. That's why I'm out the game.
Stay the